you all are ready, I'll go ahead and begin. Everybody here hopefully is here to see distribution strategies. I think on the agenda it was listed as retirement distribution strategies, but my name's Steve McGregor. I work with ICMARC. We are the third-party record keeper that's contracted with the Virginia retirement system. We do all the administration and education for the Commonwealth 457, hybrid defined contribution plans, as well as some other plans in Virginia. My role is a defined contribution plan specialist. Just so you know, I'm a salaried employee. We are licensed and we're here to help people who are part of the plan. This seminar is really geared towards people who are near, close, or maybe even in retirement, and really it covers some of the things you should be thinking about if you're not already. If you're still planning and you find out that you haven't saved enough, it may give you some ideas about how you can optimize your retirement plans that are available to you. So let's go through the agenda. First off, how much you'll need. If you're still saving and you're not sure how much you need in retirement, it'll give you a goal to aim for. We'll talk about ways to save if you're getting close and how to maximize what you can save. And then we'll look at distributions and then the websites that you can use as resources. We do cover some other things that you'll need to know when you do get close to retirement as well. So first off, how much will you need? Does anybody have a number in mind how much they need? Do you already know that dollar amount? Normally, when you look at retirement planning, financial planners will say that when they poll retirees, how much are they spending? Normally, they say 70 to 90% of their working income. So if you're not sure of a goal and you need to plan for a certain amount, you can look at a replacement ratio. And if you're making $100,000 a year for easy math, you'll probably need $70,000 to $90,000 a year. But these are the generic reasons why you're going to need it. Number one, you're going to need enough money, of course, to cover all your expenses. Number one, emergencies, major purposes. The thing about emergency funds, when you're working and they tell you 3 to 6 months, or if you have a family, 6 to 9 months emergency fund, when you're in retirement, what should your emergency fund look like? What kind of emergencies do you have when you're in retirement? It's usually a bigger one. I need to fix a roof. I have a big health scare, something of a larger nature. So you almost have to have money saved outside in some other type of plan. But you want it to last your lifetime. You may want to provide a legacy for spouse and loved ones. And you don't want to spend too little so that you don't enjoy your retirement. So how many people are VRS members? Anybody part of Plan 1 or Plan 2? Okay, any hybrid plan members? No? Oh, one hybrid plan member, okay. So anybody who is part of a VRS pension plan, if you have not done it yet, you can go online, varetire.org, you can create a member benefit profile, and a thing about a pension plan or a defined benefit plan is that the biggest things about those plans are years of service and salary. They're the biggest drivers. All the plans you need 5 years to be vested, but if you create a member benefit profile, you can actually run benefit estimates and see maybe what that benefit will be. Since they're our sponsor of the plans, of course, we want you to remind you that, hey, the great thing about these plans is pension plans are what? You don't bear any risk, and once you do turn on the income, you can't outlive it, and you could get raises. So it could be a foundation for your retirement with Social Security. When they looked at retirement income and polled retirees in the past and asked where do you get the source of income, they used to say the same 3 things: Social Security, their pension, and personal savings. When we fast forward today, the answers are a little bit different. Number one, personal savings rates are down. Pensions are becoming a dinosaur. In the private sector, only 1 in 5 companies even offer them at this point. In the public sector, they're changing rapidly. Here in Virginia, we're on our 3rd plan, right? Plan 1, Plan 2, hybrid plan. Some states don't even offer pension plans anymore. So because of that, those 2 reasons and others, there's another leg in the stool, and it's supplemental income. And this could be a job. This has to be something else because the traditional sources aren't enough anymore. One of the sources you're going to have as a source of income, of course, is Social Security. You have your pension, monthly check you can't outlive. Social Security, monthly check you can't outlive. Perfect situation, that covers all your essential expenses. But if you didn't know this, Social Security is based on your highest 35 years of earnings. High is 35 years. If you've only worked for 25 years, you have 10 years of zeros. But they take those numbers, they take a high is 35 years, and they come up with a primary insurance amount, and it comes up with a benefit amount for you. Anybody know the earliest you can take Social Security? 62. You are correct. For Social Security, everybody has a normal retirement age, and it's really based on when you were born, when your birthday is. For now, everybody born after 1960 down the bottom, 67 is your normal retirement age. But the earliest you can take it is age 62. If you do take Social Security benefits early, it's a reduced amount. And finding your birthday here on this chart, I think most people retiring today are 1943, 1955, 54, the 66-year-old. But if they took their Social Security benefit at age 62, instead of having $1,000 at age 66, they'd have a reduction of 25%. And would have $750 a month at age 62. And that's locked in. You may get raises for cost of living adjustment, but you don't bump up when you reach 66. You start off at a lower point. The gap gets wider when you look at age 67. You know, for people earlier, of course, it's a lower amount. But just know if you take it early, it's a reduced amount. If you wait past your normal retirement age, it actually rolls up about 8% every year, and then stops at age 70. So a lot of times you'll hear all the strategies, and there's like 5,000 different ways to take Social Security. They change the laws constantly. So if I was getting ready to retire and I wasn't sure how to actually start taking that, I would probably set up an appointment with Social Security. And you can do that 6 months, a year in advance, and talk about the different options out there. A lot of times you hear, if you have a couple, high income earner, low income earner, who should take Social Security first? And normally the strategy here is low income earner, take the spousal benefit as early as possible, so half the spouse. The higher income earner will wait, let it roll up all the way to age 70, locking in a higher amount, and then when they elect to turn theirs on, guess what? The spouse's benefit now jumps up to a higher amount. So there's all these strategies to do it, but just know if you take it early, it's a lesser amount. If you wait, it's a lot more, or 8%. Pretty much guaranteed. If you're thinking about working and taking Social Security early and have earned income, be aware of this. Social Security doesn't like people double dipping, I guess. But if you're taking Social Security at 62 and working with earned income, you don't want to make more than $17,040 a year. If you do, they're going to start reducing your Social Security benefit $1 for every 2. That's earned income, not pension income, not investment income. The year you turn your full retirement age, you can make $45,360 before that birthday. If you do go over that amount, they reduce the benefit $1 for every 3. Once you hit normal retirement age, don't worry about it anymore. You can make as much as you want, and they're not going to affect your Social Security benefits, and it'll actually keep going toward your earnings record that 35 years. So sometimes people get raises while they're still working. Is anybody here taking Social Security already? When did you take it? Normal age or early or? Mandatory 70. Okay. All right, so one thing about Social Security people don't really realize is, you know, it can be taxable, it might not be taxable, but it's not taxed at 100%, which is a good thing. That's one reason why people don't usually need as much in retirement than they did when they were working. And if you're an individual filer, if you make less than $25,000, you wouldn't pay any taxes on your Social Security benefit. 25 to 34, 50% of it is taxed. If it's more than 34, 85%. For married couples, if you're making less than $32,000 adjusted gross income, no federal tax on your Social Security benefits. 32 to 44, half of it would be taxable. And then more than $44,000, 85% of your Social Security benefit would be taxable. The good news is it's not 100%, it's just 85%. But you should be aware that some benefits may be taxable. When you apply for Social Security, you're going to need, of course, the number of each applicant, proof of age, your latest W-2 or self-employment tax return, an earnings estimate if you're under full retirement age. That's what they want to know if they're going to have to do a reduction for that plan. And then bank information for direct deposit and information about marriages and divorces. And the reason they ask that is, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but if you know somebody who's been married for more than 10 years, divorced, and never got remarried, and this is before 60 years old, they may be able to take Social Security benefits on their ex-spouse. Their earnings record, they would never know about it, but it could be a higher amount. So if you have a situation where somebody stays at home with the kids, didn't work, they have all those zeros in their earnings record, if they've been married for more than 10 years and divorced, not remarried, they may be able to get a higher Social Security benefit. And that's why they want to know it. So there's a lot of different things in that, so I say always call them and sit down with Social Security before you made an ultimate decision. For Medicare, and this is one of the biggest determinants whether or not people can retire before 65 or after it. And really the cost of health insurance gets a little bit more palatable, I guess, when you hit age 65. But Medicare is the reason for that, and normally you're eligible for Medicare when you turn age 65 or you're older. If you are disabled or determined disabled by Social Security, 24 months later, you can be part of Medicare. If you have Lou Gehrig's disease or ALS, permanent kidney failure, or if you have dialysis or transplant. Medicare, what it covers, what are the different parts? Part A is your major medical, it's your hospital insurance. And there's no monthly copay to Medicare, it's a deductible. And the deductible for 2018 was $1,340. So normally when somebody's getting ready to turn 65, they'll get something in the mail from Social Security saying, hey, congratulations, you're part of Part A. If you are taking Social Security benefits, they'll send you the second part too, but there's no reason why you shouldn't sign up for Part A at 65 or be in the plan. You don't pay a monthly premium. If you are still working, your employer's insurance is going to be the primary. They would be secondary. So it may cover something your employer's insurance does not. So it's not a bad thing. But major medical, so this is your hospital. This would be surgery and hospital stays, covers most of those expenses. There is a deductible, but it doesn't cover everything. One thing I remember from my life and health exam, I don't know how many years ago I took it, but I remember an instructor talking about Medicare and Part A. And he said, one thing about Medicare is there's a lot of gaps. And the one thing I remember is Medicare Part A doesn't cover the first 3 pints of blood in surgery. You know why that is? Most people die within the first 3 pints of blood in surgery. It also doesn't cover a couple other things that people need when they're in retirement, and they are eyeglasses, hearing aids, dental, not covered by Medicare. So just know you may need a supplemental policy. Major medical is Part A. Part B is the part that you usually use, and this is your doctor. And there is a monthly premium. It starts at $134. Depending on your income, it could be higher. And there is a approved charge of $183, and then you would pay 20%, and Medicare would cover 80%, kind of like how your insurance works today. So that's Part B, and that's your doctor. I go down to my doctor, I've got the sniffles like now, that's what I would use, Part B. You want to sign up for that 3 months before or 3 months after you actually need it. If it's 65, 3 months before, 3 months after. If you are still working and then you retire, you want to do it within 3 months or after that event. If you do not sign up for it and start paying the premiums and you're going to use Part B, there's a penalty for every month that you miss if you wait. They don't want people waiting and then signing up for it when they need it. So just know when you're ready, sign up for it. Part D is the prescription drug plan. This varies by state. I think in Virginia it's around $33, $35 a month premium. Covers some of the costs of prescription drugs, but not all. And that would be something you'd want to enroll in as well. Depending on who your employer is, they may have a Medicare Advantage plan, which is a private insurer essentially doing the same things that Medicare or in combination with Medicare. But these are the primary parts. So if I'm just using Medicare itself, I don't pay anything for Part A. I pay $134 a month at least for Part B plus copays, and then I'll be paying probably around $35 a month for Part D. But I'm going to want to look at a Medigap or a supplemental policy, depending on when I retire. A supplemental policy, they're standardized. They're lettered like A through N, and a lot of them have gone away. But they fill in the gaps, and you can see what covers copays, what covers all these different pieces, and you may want to purchase that. The average expense that a retiree spends out of pocket a year for retirement, every time I see the number, it goes up a little bit, but 65-year-old couple, I think the average per person is somewhere between $6,000 to $7,000 a year. That's all premiums, all copays, everything else. Enrollment periods, initial is age 65, special is if I'm working and then I retire, yes, I can sign up. And then the general period, if I did not sign up for it, for whatever reason, I could go back and sign up between January and March. So this goes back to those income planning, and I mentioned that 70 to 90% replacement. When they poll retirees, they usually spend 70 to 90%. Lifestyle is a factor, but really it's a bell curve. People in poverty level, they spend 100% replacement. People who earn $250,000 or more a year usually need 100% replacement. That must be a lifestyle issue. But if you're planning for 80 or 90%, you will probably be okay if you're a normal spender. But if you're doing the planning, let's say I'm a few years away from retirement, I want to start finding out if I'm going to have enough. And that's where you can use that replacement ratio. And this example shows somebody who has a salary of $60,000 and they're aiming for 80% replacement, or they need $48,000 a year. So now we go and find our sources of income. I go out to VRS. I happen to be a Plan 1 or Plan 2 member. And I create a profile and I find out based on the year I want to retire, I'm going to get $20,000 a year from my pension. Great, can't outlive it. It can only go up with cost of living increases. That's a good piece. Social Security, I found out, is $18,000 a year. So there I've got $38,000 covered, guaranteed for life, can get increases. That's a good start. But there's still a gap. I still need to find somewhere to get $10,000 a year. And if I sit down with somebody like me or another financial consultant or planner, we can plug all the numbers that are already there. We can make assumptions about what you're saving and rates of return. And we can say, all right, based on those numbers, that $10,000 gap, how long will that money last? Well, you have enough that's going to last 10 years. Maybe we should start saving more. And you do have opportunities to save more. And that's where maximizing savings come in. For the 457 plan, or the governmental plan that's offered at UVA, as well as other places, any state agency, for the most part, the normal contribution limit is $18,500 a year. Once you hit age 50, it's called the age 50 catch-up, but you really don't have to apply for it. You can contribute an additional $6,000 or $24,500. The last feature is that pre-retirement catch-up or standard catch-up, that plus 18.5. What that is if you're 3 years away from being retired under your VRS plan, whether it be age 50 or 65, whatever, 3 years away from being eligible for unreduced retirement, and ORFI has got a different age as well, you can actually make up lost contributions. If I haven't contributed the maximum to a 457 plan my whole career, I can actually defer $37,000 for 3 years up until that retirement date. It's called standard catch-up. You have to actually apply for it. There's an application, VRS approves it, and then you can change your contributions up to that amount. We have seen it used, so just know 18.5 normally, 24.5 for age 50 or older, and then there's a standard catch-up provision, $37,000 last 3 years before retirement. You also have the ability to contribute to what? Other plans too. You have a 403B provider, several of them. But per plan type, you could do 18.5 in a 457 and 18.5 in a 403B. Once I hit at 50, it's 24.5 and 24.5. So between those two plans, you have the ability to defer quite a bit of income. In the 457 plan, we'll talk a little bit about the different types of contributions, and this is true to for the 403Bs as well, and they're pre-tax and Roth. And Both the 403Bs and the 457, they allow pre-tax or Roth contributions. What are the difference? Well, the idea behind pre-tax contributions are most retirement plans start this way because when do most people make more income? Is it when they're working or is it when they're in retirement? Most people are making more while they're working. And that being said, pre-tax contributions lower your income now. It grows tax deferred, and then when you do take withdrawals out, you'll pay taxes then. If you're in a lower marginal rate, you'll pay less taxes. So that's the idea for pre-tax. Don't pay income taxes now, pay them later. Roth is the exact opposite. A Roth contribution, you're paying your taxes up front. It grows tax deferred as well, but as long as you satisfy two rules, not only those contributions, but all the gains are tax-free too. So 457 or a 403B, the limits are the same, 18.5, but that can be pre-tax or Roth or a combination of both. Just know that pre-tax, if I want to lower my income, that's what I want to use. If I want tax-free withdrawals, then I want to do Roth contributions. Both are used for tax planning purposes. Anybody have a Roth IRA on the outside? You do? Okay, it's separate than a Roth IRA. You can actually contribute to a Roth IRA as well as do Roth contributions to a plan. And the limits are a lot higher in the plan, but you can access a Roth IRA before you actually retire. So when you do retire, people at state agencies, they may be able to have their unused vacation and sick pay paid out to them. If they want to and they have room within their plan limits, that 24/5, they can actually defer that into the 457 plan. Usually there's a one-time deferral form you would use, and they say 2.5 months before your pay date or your last day of retirement, but I've seen it done a lot less time, maybe a month in advance. But it'd be a way to take that pay, instead of having it paid out, roll it into your plan, keep it tax deferred. I don't know if this is true everywhere, but it's my understanding, and what I've seen at state agencies is when they do pay this out, it's taxed at a rate that's much higher than your normal taxation rate. Ends up being somewhere between 32 and 38% tax, like a commission rate or a one-time benefit. If I roll it in the plan, there are some taxes withheld, but not quite as much. This is what the form looks like. There's 2 pages, and on the back side of it, it'll show you what type of pay it is, and you would get that to your payroll officer before the pay date. All right, for people who are in Plan 1 or 2, or even the hybrid plan, have you ever heard of a partial lump sum optional payment? Anybody ever heard of that? It's one of the worst acronyms ever, I think. It's called the PLOP. But what that is if you have worked past your unreduced retirement age, so Plan 1, unreduced retirement is 30 years of service and at least 50. So if I'm 50 and I've worked 31, 32, 33 years, or at least 5 years and over 65, so it'd be 66, 67, 68, 3 years past. If for Plan 2, it's a little bit different rules at your normal retirement age or the rule of 90, same with hybrid. But if you've worked past those dates, 1, 2, or 3 years, a PLOP payment is taking a year's worth of those monthly payments in a lump sum. So it's like cashing out some of your pension a little bit early. You can do 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. When you do go online and do a benefit estimate, it'll show you how it reduces your income, but now you have this lump sum that you have to either invest or I guess spend. But the reason they mention it in this presentation is if I take that partial lump sum and just have it paid out to me, instead of getting like $25,000 in payments for the month, I get a full lump sum. What is that going to do for my taxes for the year? I have another $25,000 on top of whatever income I already have, and it may bump me in another tax bracket, and I may end up paying Uncle Sam a little bit more than I probably should. You can take the PLOP payments and actually roll them into the 457 or the 401A, which is offered through Virginia. That would keep it tax deferred until you actually took money out of it. Because those pension benefits, the majority of them are all pre-tax. So just remember, if you are in this situation when you're cashing out some of your pension and you're in that situation, you have the ability to roll it into the 457 or even an IRA on the outside to keep it tax deferred. this happens a lot. I tell people all the time. I've met with lots of people. I cover state agencies, school systems, subdivisions, like counties, you name it, all across the state. And all through my career, I've met with plenty of people, and they may have accounts all over the place while they're working. What happens when you get to retirement? Normally, people start moving money together because they don't want to manage 10 different accounts. They usually want to take money from one or two places. Now, you do have the ability to roll money into the 457 and the cash match plan. You can also roll money out when you leave. Know that the rules between plans are pretty simple. A lot of times it's whether or not the other company will accept it, but you can consolidate assets. Really, if I'm in the 457 and I'm contributing while I'm working, once I do separate from service, the only way I'm really going to add to that at that point is if I roll money into it. But if you are in the plan, just know you still have access to people like myself. When they get to the point that they have to take required minimum distributions at 70.5, I get a lot of phone calls. So as long as you're in the plan, you can access to people, cover the state. There's 7 of us. If you are in the 457 plan and you have separated from service and you are under 59.5, please talk to one of us before you do anything, because if you roll that to an IRA, now you have a 10% early withdrawal penalty. 457 plan, governmental plans never have an early withdrawal penalty. As long as you're separated from service, you can take withdrawals, might pay taxes, but never a penalty. The plan that VRS offers, the 457 plan, does have low fee structures and competitively priced investments. And we do have resources and tools. So just know that you can use the plan if you're in it when you do retire. So let's talk about stuff that's probably really important, managing your distributions. One thing you got to think about is taxes, but the other thing is you've accumulated all this money, all this time, investment strategy, how much risk you want to take. But when you get to the other side of retirement, you have a little bit different risk, and you have to actually take money out whether you want to or not. Excuse me. Love allergy season. All right, so when you do take withdrawals, or when you're separated from service, 457 and cash match plan, there's a 1 calendar month wait, but after that point, how do you take money out? Number one, you don't have to take any withdrawals immediately unless you're required to, but you can do anything you want. You can take a full lump sum, you can take a partial lump sum, you can set up periodic payments, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually. You can annuitize it either full or partially. You can roll it out to a Roth and convert it. You can roll it to a traditional IRA. You could roll it to a 403B and vice versa. So really anything you can think of, you can do when distribution time. That's the good thing about defined contribution plans. You pick how it comes up. You can use it as you need it. Most people will not take a full lump sum distribution. Why? If it's all pre-tax money, you have that big hit, that big tax hit that 1 year. Usually you see people to supplement their income, they'll take monthly withdrawals, or they'll send a one-time withdrawal in, say, send me $5,000 or whatever it may be. But know that all these choices are yours, and you can revise those distributions that you've set up at any time. All right, so for us in the 457, of course you can set it up for direct deposit and the different payout amounts. There are some things with the 457 and tax withholding that are a little bit quirky. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you have systematic payments set up that are going to last more than 10 years, there is a W-4P form you can use to adjust your withholding to whatever you want. There's some standard withholding amounts that we're going to discuss in just a second. For Roth contributions, there's 2 rules to get the gains tax-free. And really, they have 3 on this slide, but really the 2 rules. If I am doing Roth contributions, I have to have 5 years elapsed from my very first contribution year. If I put in a Roth contribution in the 457 December 2018, that's year 1. So I have to get past, 2023. That's just the first contribution, not all of them. Second rule is to get the gains tax-free, when I do take those withdrawals, I have to be over 59.5. Last but not least, plan rules. I've got to be separated from employer to actually take those distributions. Now, the good thing about the Roth contributions in a 457, I guess, I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but if I took it out before 59 and a half, do you think I have a penalty? There's not. There's never a penalty for a 457. The thing that happens is now I have to pay taxes on the gains on the Roth contributions. So I defeat some of the purpose of doing a Roth, but I would never have a 10% penalty. Other types of plans, I may have that as a problem. So distribution options, you can roll money out to an IRA or another qualified plan. That could be a 401A, 401K, 403B, 457, pretty much any retirement plan out there. You can do that full or partially, and if you are doing a direct rollover transfer, they keep their tax deferred status. Happens all the time. One thing you should be aware of, though, if you are rolling money to an IRA, is you're going from a group plan, which may have, like the Commonwealth of Virginia 457 has about 80,000 people in it. They have large leverage of scale. They can negotiate their fees. If I'm going to an IRA, I'm going to be going to a totally different fee structure, and I'm an individual investor for the most part. Yes?
Isn't it also true that IRAs are not protected from lawsuits in the same way that?
Well, you could run into that too, but I would have to research that. You have a plan sponsor who does the fiduciary responsibility and like VRS, right? Will they be sued for their investment fee structure versus an individual? You're saying them going after your assets?
No, if you're like sued, your assets are more protected in a 401 or 403 than IRA.
Varies by state. I'd have to look at the tax laws. I'm not a tax advisor when it comes to that. But it's something, if you want me to research, I can go get that done. Front-end loads, back-end loads, transaction fees. A lot of IRAs have, you can put money in there, and then if you leave, you do have to pay a $50 fee. There are asset-based fees. There are annual fees. Just know that the fee structure is going to be different, and make sure you understand what you're actually investing in. It's not a bad thing. It's just you have to know what the difference is. Because if you roll out and then have regrets, if you don't have any money in that plan, you can't go back to it. You could go to another IRA or another qualified plan, but there's no turning back, I guess, if you're completely out. Keeping money in the plan, you don't have to take distributions, yes. When people retire, they don't have to take distributions until 70 and a half, and they just want to let you know, compare the fee structure, compare the investments. VRS does have stable value investments. They have the pension fund of Virginia, or the VRS trust fund investment style. They do all the due diligence and for the plan investments and choose them. And you do have a self-directed brokerage window. So there's a lot of things you can do inside the 457 and cash match plan. No contributions to rollovers after that point. And once again, if you're under 59 and a half, you don't have an early withdrawal penalty in a 457, so please don't roll it out. So planning for taxes, if you're taking money out pre-59 and a half, plans like the cash match plan, a 401A, a 403B, a traditional IRA, 401K, most retirement plans except, I guess, Roth IRAs and 457s have an early withdrawal penalty of 10%. There's some loopholes to that though, several, but one of them is if you retire the year you turn 55, you would not have to pay that 10% early withdrawal penalty. It's considered early retirement. If and just so you know, traditional IRA is the same. Another one would be 72T or sequential equal periodic payments, the small amount you could take out. But just know normally 59.5 for most plans, never for 457. If you're retiring the year you turn 55, there may not be a penalty as well. All withdrawals from pre-tax money are going to be taxed as ordinary income. And for the 457 plan, they have that standard withholding for lump sums, partial lump sums, and those short-term payments. And that's 20% for federal taxes. If you're in Virginia at the time, they're going to withhold 4% for Virginia taxes. So really, if I'm doing a partial lump sum or doing distributions that are going to last less than 10 years, I've got 24% coming out on the top. And people sometimes get upset by that, but I say, look, what they're doing is they're protecting you from paying taxes. In the end, they're having to write a check. If you are in required minimum distribution phase where you're 70.5, the rules change. Now the standard is 10% for federal and whatever the state is. but normally 24%. For Roth, of course, you're not going to have a 1099. You're not going to owe any money on those Roth distributions, so that's a good thing. If you're living in Florida at the time, it would be 20% for federal and 0% for state. If you're rolling money to another plan, there is no withholding. That's a tax-free exchange. So when you must take money, if you've accumulated all this money and you don't need it when you do retire, there's a bad joke, I know. I mean, if you take the words the IRS and put them together, what do they spell? Theirs. And if you put money in pre-tax, it grows tax deferred. Eventually, when they wrote those bills, they said, and it wasn't really the IRS, but they said, we eventually want some tax revenue from all these monies that are saved for retirement. And that's where required minimum distributions come in. When you turn 70 and a half, 70 and 6 months that year, you have some decisions to make. And this is for traditional IRAs, this is for 457 plans, 403Bs, 401Ks, 401As, everything but I guess Roth accounts like Roth IRAs. Or if you're still working and contributing, you wouldn't have to take this. But most plans, 70 and a half, now you have to start taking withdrawals. The required minimum distributions are based on distribution tables, and there's 2 of them. If it's just a single life table, which means my spouse and I or my primary beneficiary are 10 years apart from each other or less than 10 years in age, it's going to be a little bit less than 3% of the value from the prior year, year 1, and every year it's going to increase slightly. By the time I'm 80, it's about 5% of the value. By the time I'm 90, it's about 9% of the value. So there's 2 factors. One, that percentage is coming up every year. The other thing is what the value is. So your required minimum distribution can vary year to year. But if you don't need the money, you should know that even if you don't want to take some money, you have to start paying some taxes on this pre-tax money, whether you want to or not. My dad complained for about 3 years after he had to start taking these. Eventually, we had to tell him, you know, just go to the Apple store and spend the money on a computer or something because it wasn't worth listening to. But just know you have to take required minimum distribution. So if you're doing your income planning and you know you have all these buckets of money to draw from, this pre-tax money or retirement plan money or IRA money, you have to start taking a percentage out of it. If you fail to take your required minimum distribution, that's one of the steepest penalties I can think of. I think it's 6% penalty if you put too much in a plan. It's 10% penalty if you take money out early. If you don't take your required minimum distribution, it's a 50% penalty of what it should have been taken. Pretty steep. If you're in the 457 plan that we are the record keeper for, we process it this way, and we'll go through how the timeline goes, but we send notifications saying you need to take your required minimum distribution. If you never respond, we automatically send it to you at the end of the year so you don't have to worry about that penalty. This is how it works. The year you turn 70 and a half, you have 2 choices. You can either defer your first required minimum till April of the following year, or you can take your first one that year. If you defer it, you have to take 2 that second year. But just for an example, this is how it will work. They look at the year-end balance from the prior year. In this example, they're looking at age 71. If the 12/31/17 balance of my account was $50,000, and I'm 71 now, I'm going to take that 50 and divide it by my distribution period of 26.5. That gives me my required minimum distribution. So 1886.79 is my required minimum. If you go to our website, varetire.org, I guess /457, or look at calculators, we have a required minimum distribution calculator and a checklist. You can actually plug in your values and whatever rate of return you want and see how over time that would work. But every year it gets a little bit bigger. So some of the challenges. Any questions about anything I've talked about before? And I'll have to look on the IRA for tax purposes, or lawsuits versus plans. But generically, I want to kind of go into how you take money out, unless you have something else you want to ask. Anybody? Okay. So really, your challenge is pretty simple. I have this money. I have to take withdrawals from it at some point. I may be using it to supplement my income. So how do I make that work? So first off, I have to be afraid that if I take too much investment risk, I'm exposed to the next market downturn, right? Too risky. If I take too little risk and don't invest for enough return, I might have insufficient lifetime income. I was too safe and I ran out of money. If I withdraw at too high of a withdrawal rate, I could run out of money as well. If I'm taking 10% a year and don't have a lot of return, I could be out of money in 10, 11, 12 years. So how much you withdraw makes a difference too. You might outlive your assets. Last but not least, you might not withdraw enough money out and have an undesirable standard of living. I don't know that many people who do that, but there are some. I heard about this Aunt Ruby. She would never take any money and spend it. But anyway, let's talk about some ways to take money out. Normally, if you go to a financial website, there's probably 5 different ways they talk about taking money out of accumulated assets. They'll say earnings only, income only. For retirement plans, usually we gravitate to these 2 because they do apply to your situation. Has anybody heard of the 4% rule of thumb? Okay, yeah, that's pretty standard. It's actually changed over the years. But what financial professionals did is they took Monte Carlo scenarios with real market returns and said, all right, how much is a safe withdrawal rate from our portfolio that has an investment mix of 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds? So a balanced mix. And they ran all these scenarios, and what they came up with is the 4% rule of thumb. 91% of the time, if you're taking 4% out of your account value and you index it 3% up each year for inflation, it's enough to last at least 25 years or through retirement. So 4% rule of thumb, it does have a chance for increase, not guaranteed, but really all you're adjusting your investments and adjusting how much you're taking out year by year. So if I know that RMD is slightly less than 4% that first year, and I'm using this strategy, which indexes for inflation, most of the time this will be enough to take out your required minimum as well. And I'll probably have money left over. So does that make sense? The 9% of the time that it didn't work, what do you think happened in those scenarios? Those would be periods where the first several years of retirement were a steep economic decline. So in other words, if I was using this strategy and the first year of my retirement was 2008, 2009, or maybe the end of 2007, this may not have worked. Because if there is a big market decline and I'm 60% in stocks, I will still feel it. I know in 2008, just that one calendar year, S&P was down somewhere between 38, 34%, just that one year. A balanced fund that same year, 60-40, was down about 22%. So if I have a drop like that and I take a withdrawal, even though there is a recovery, I'm coming from a lower point. And I used to run thousands of projections when I worked at a variable annuity company, and we used real market returns and people taking withdrawals from retirement, all kinds of withdrawal rates. And if you have a severe decline the first couple of years, yes, you can see your assets run out in 12 years easily. Seen it 1,000 times. That same scenario, same withdrawal rate, if you have a first couple good years in the beginning, you may never see anything horrible at all. It's called sequence of returns risk. When those returns happen, but you still have that risk even with this strategy. So that's the 4% rule of thumb. Works sometimes, not perfect, right? But pretty simple. Don't have to change investments, change what you're taking out. The second one is my favorite, and I don't know why, but it's called the bucket or withdrawal order strategy. And really, it just fits in with how my brain thinks. But really, it's managing your withdrawals. And what you would do is you think of your retirement as buckets of time. You could say, I think I'm going to live 30 years. Maybe I might not. My first 10 years of retirement are early retirement. My second 10 years are mid-retirement. My last 10 years are late retirement. And what I do is I match up my bucket of money's investment risk based on when I'm going to use it and its time horizon. Kind of like how I save money now. So my first bucket of money, if that's early retirement, I'm going to invest it in something that doesn't have a lot of volatility because I'm taking money out now. My second bucket of money, I'm not touching for 10 years. That's a good amount of time. I'm going to take more risk and try to get some return on that bucket of money. My third bucket of money is 20 years from now. That, to me, is a lifetime in investing. I'm going to take a lot of risk. I want to get growth from that third bucket. So it's not perfect, but I am able to adjust how much is in each bucket. Let's say I'm retiring at 60 and I just want to take a higher withdrawal amount until 65. Maybe my first bucket is a lot more than the other two buckets because I'm just bridging a gap. I can adjust it that way. I do have to remember to change the investments. You know, once I go from the end of one bucket to the next, so it's not perfect, I could have just two buckets if I want. But in my example, you're matching up when you're taking it out to the investment risk, which I think is perfect. That third bucket that's 20 years out, anybody heard the rule of 72? If you invest your money for 10 years, if it averages 7.2%, doesn't matter if it's up or down, just the average is 7.2, called the rule of 72 because your money will double in 10 years. So if I take risk with that third bucket and I had done a third, and it averages 7.2, it'll double once, and then that'll double. So I'll end up with more money than I even started with if the buckets were equal in the beginning. So that's all it is, matching up your investments for when you're taking it in the risk profile. But it's more flexible, and it's more complex, and it's not guaranteed. But that's another thing that you can do. If you're using different types of investments, it works very well. For us in the 457 plan, if you're using our investment mix, for our withdrawal form, normally if you say, send me a withdrawal of $500 a month, they will take it proportionally from the investments that you have, right? But you have the ability to pick and choose where you take the withdrawals from. If I want to take it from a retirement fund or a stable value fund, I could just say take $500 a month from this, and then that kind of works into that bucket strategy. But that's the second one. Any questions about this, either one? All right. All right, so plan for taxes. You know the withdrawals are taxed as ordinary income except for Roth. For the 457, they withhold 20% for federal and then state taxes. If you take money out of the cash match plan before 59.5, unless you retired the year you turned 55, probably going to pay a 10% penalty. So take the 457 money first. No penalty in that plan. I'm not going to spend a lot on this plan unless we have people in the audience who are part of the 457. I'll kind of give you a high-level overview of the Commonwealth 457 if you're not familiar with it. But their investment mix is organized into what's called the pathway method. And this allows investors to pick and choose their investments, adjust it to their own risk tolerance, and it's supposedly supposed to make it easy for people. You can be in all three pathways, but they're called the Do It For Me path, the Help Me Do It path, and the Do It Myself path. The Do It For Me path, this is a path that's probably good for somebody who wants to be invested, does not want to take the time and effort to pick the investments, doesn't want to manage it, but is okay with some degree of risk. That would be a good one for them. For the Help Me Do It path would be for somebody who wants to take a more active role, who either wants to take risk, doesn't want to take risk, or just wants to be hands-on. And last but not least, the Do It Myself path, that's for somebody who knows exactly what they want, and they can't get it from the other two pathways and the choices. So just briefly, the Do It For Me path is also the default investment. For hybrid plan employees who have mandatory defined contribution to this plan, or the 401A plan, if they don't pick anything, they will be defaulted in the target date funds. If I sign up for the Commonwealth 457 and I don't pick an investment, they will default me into the target date funds. And they assume for default investing that everybody retires at age 65. So target date funds, if you're not familiar with them, are professionally managed funds. These funds are managed by BlackRock Investments, one of the largest institutional money managers in the world. They're actually the first company to ever create this type of investment. First one, institutional, 1993. I think Vanguard was the first for retail, but first company to do it was BlackRock. And all they do is they build an investment portfolio, stocks, bonds, commodities, real estate, inflation-protected bonds, based on the idea that you're retiring or taking money out on that target date. So for me, if I'm defaulted in, I'm 49. That's 16 years from now, I'll be 65. So 16 plus 2018 is 2034. The closest date is 2035, so that's what they would put me in. The way BlackRock manages these, they assume the more time you have, the more risk you can take. So 2060 is so far out, it's about 100% and more aggressive investments. But over time, slowly, quarter by quarter, year by year, they slowly get more conservative until all of these funds turn into the retirement portfolio once they hit that target date year. At that point, it's a pretty static model. It's about 65% in bonds. It would be considered moderately conservative. But it is a set it and forget it type investment, professionally managed, gets more conservative over time. So that's one. I can also, and that's the different investment pieces again, real estate, international stocks, small mid-cap stocks, large cap stocks, US bonds, inflation-linked bonds, and commodities. They start off aggressive and then over time get more conservative. For the Help Me Do It path, you have 10 different investment options. You can switch between the target dates and the Help Me Do It path at any time, no cost between those two. You have 2 really safe investments or capital preservation funds, money market and stable value fund. 3 different bond funds. The first bond fund is your investment grade bonds, corporate and government bonds. Inflation protected bond fund is a TIPS fund, so it's bonds that are tied to the consumer price index and will track inflation a little bit better than maybe the traditional bond. And then your high yield bond is your less than investment grade bonds, or junk bonds, so higher risk bonds. That stock fund is the S&P 500, so 500 large cap US companies. The small mid cap stock fund is the Russell 2500 index, so 2,500 small mid-sized US companies. The international stock fund is a index fund as well. It's developed and emerging markets. And then you do have a real estate fund that is a REIT fund. It's about 54% United States, rest across the globe. These here, stock funds, small, mid-cap, international, global real estate, are probably the highest risk, highest reward inside of this portfolio. Also most volatile because of that. The last investment choice is not the riskiest, it's the Virginia Retirement System investment portfolio. And if you haven't guessed what this is the pension fund of Virginia, the VRS Trust, the same management style as Plan 1, Plan 2, and hybrid plan pension funds. It's not in the VRS Trust, it's in a separately managed account, and they use a lot of different investment pieces inside of that to manage the risk and pay out the benefits for the people who are retirees for Virginia. You can have the same investment style in the 457. There's some quirks to it because it is a pension fund. Money can only go into it or out of it once a quarter. So for this example, if I'm paid every 2 weeks, my money has to go somewhere until the end of the quarter, then they will invest it in the Virginia Retirement System fund, and it would go into the 2025 fund until the end of the quarter and then sweep out. If I'm a retiree, I can only take money out of that fund once a quarter. So last but not least, you do have a window to a self-directed brokerage account. Once you have 2,500 built up in the Commonwealth 457 or any of the Virginia-sponsored plans, you can open a TD Ameritrade account, $50 one-time fee, and then you would move $1,000 or more transfer over into that account. It takes 24 hours to clear, all their trading costs would apply, but at that point, just like any other TD Ameritrade account, individual stocks, individual bonds, exchange-traded funds, publicly traded mutual funds are available to you. Can't do margins and options or currency tradings and some other things, but the majority of things in the universe of investing are open to you. So you can do a lot inside the plans. So VRS wants to make sure you know you don't have to leave the plans that you have that they offer while you're here. You still have access to people like myself, fee structure, everything else. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but know that you don't have to leave and there are a lot of resources for you as well. So this is the last part. If you're getting close to retirement and you're not sure about a lot of answers, and even sitting out on the table today, I had a lot of people ask me questions, and one of them was like something I wish I had this to direct them to, but are some resources you're gonna need. Number one, if you are in the VRS deferred comp plan or cash match plan or hybrid plan and you wanna know about the defined contribution side, there is an 877 number on the website, of course, for my company. Defined benefit, VRS, they have an office downtown Richmond, we do too. They have reps, we have reps as well, but you can call the counseling center and get information from them. For tax situations, like the question about whether or not you can be sued, I'll probably go to IRS.gov to look first, either that or the state website to find out how the rules apply. Social Security, if you do not know what your estimated benefit is, you can actually go out their website, create a profile, and look at your own earnings record and find out what your estimated benefits are different years. Medicare.gov. This is a great website. It's a lot of information, but let's say you have to take care of your parents. They're looking for a nursing home or assisted living. They actually have a list and ratings for all the places out there that are available on Medicare.gov, as well as information about Medicare itself. State Corporation Commission of Virginia, if I want to know what the supplement policy premiums are, if I want to know about long-term care insurance or other types of insurance, there's a lot of information on State Corporation Commission as well. So that's an option to look at too. So investment resources, we're almost done. Thanks for staying around after lunch. But investment resources online, we have fund profiles, we have investment guides, we have a lot of information on each one of the different investments choices that I just went through briefly. All online. If you're in the plan already, you'll get quarterly information as well. If you want to reach me, go to varetire.org/DCP, and you can register for an online appointment or just reach out to me and we'll set something up. Account access, just so you know, if you do log in, you can manage your account online or over the phone, whether that's changing contributions, changing your investments. There is a phone app now as well for everybody who does everything on their phone. VRS DCP will actually let you manage your account on your smartphone. So finishing up, online over the phone is how all transactions are processed. If you call Investor Services and press option 1, it goes to Investor Services. Option 2 would go to your defined contribution plan specialist. If you're in Charlottesville, it should go to me or my voicemail. And that is the end of distribution strategies. Cover a little bit about Medicare, a little bit about Social Security, and a lot about the defined contribution plan, at least the 457 plan. But the two investment strategies, or taking money out, are probably things everybody should actually hear. If there's any questions you have besides the one, I'd be glad to answer anything I know or can help you with. Any questions at this point? All right, well, if you like my card or want to reach out to me, I'll have it up here. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I appreciate you coming in.